not a few of the Greeks, prominent women as well as men. But when the Jews from Thessalonica learned that the word of God was preached by Paul at Berea, they came there also and stirred up the crowds. And so these Jewish individuals in the city of Thessalonica that had been troubling Paul and his group for some time, now they have went away and gone to Berea, and there they were preaching and having much success. The Jews couldn't tolerate that, and so they followed Paul and came to Berea and pulled the same things there that they had not only in Thessalonica, and then they were stirring up the crowds. So they got the crowds all stirred up in the opposition to Paul and the gospel. Now immediately, verse 14, the brethren sent Paul away to go to the sea. Now I want to call your attention to this 14th verse, particularly because I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. When you look at some maps that track out Paul's journeys, some of them will have him going by land, just coming around and looping and coming right down through Greece and Acacia and all of that, coming to Athens. And part of the reason that this is possibly done is because of the rendering that is found in the King James version of the Bible in verse 14. Because the King James version reads, "Then immediately the brethren sent Paul away to go," and then these words are found, "as it were, to the sea." So now that has led some to believe that the brethren just tricked the Jews from Thessalonica. They pretended like they were going to the sea, but in reality they went a land route. Now, that is the reading of the King James. Now, as we read this in the New King James, then it just says they sent Paul away to go to the sea. So most commentators that I've read think that Paul went just as our maps would show us. He went and then he made the sea route and then finally made his way back up to Athens as the course is shown. But that is certainly something that if you see a map, or perhaps you read in a commentary where someone will make this comment, and most will say that it lends at least possibility that he could have gone either way. He could have went the sea route or he could have went the land route. And then the thought is generally expressed that he went by the sea route because that would have been much quicker and it would have been a way that is certainly in harmony with the text. So, verse 14, they sent Paul away immediately, but notice Silas and Timothy remained there. Now, I don't know why the emphasis was on Paul's need to leave, but Timothy and Silas stayed. I don't know the impetus of all of that. I don't know. We can get into all kinds of, well, maybe this is the case or this is the case, but nothing tells us particularly why. Now, I would think Paul was probably the object of their attack because of who he was, and Timothy was probably still considered by these Jews as being a young kind of upstart, perhaps, and so they weren't really focused on him. But we really don't know. All we know is Timothy and Silas were left there. And so now those who conducted Paul brought him to Athens. Now, once again, I would encourage you to look at a map and just see the journey as he goes from Berea, because he's made his way to Philippi, and then he dropped down to Amphipolis, Apollonia, and then he came up to Thessalonica, then he dropped back down to Berea, and then from Berea they sent him by ship on the Aegean Sea, and he came down and he followed the coastline, and then he turned up and went into that would be the very, very southern part of that area known as Acacia. And there he's going to come to the city of Athens, which was a Grecian area, but yet it was in that part that is predominantly identified as Achaia. So now we have Paul going to be arriving in Athens. But when he arrived there, then he gave a command. Those that had accompanied him when he got to Athens, then they probably let him, as he got off the ship, then they probably stayed at the harbor area, because the city of Athens itself was 5 miles from the port or the harbor. So as Paul gets off, they say their goodbyes, and Paul now heads off going to Athens. And now we see where he gives a command to Timothy and to Silas by those that had conducted him. And so he now tells them, "Come to me with all speed." So he wants Timothy and Silas with him. And then they departed. Now, why was Paul wanting Timothy and Silas? Folks, when we think about Paul, we think of somebody who wasn't afraid of anything. But Paul wanted Timothy and Silas, because for the first time since he had been commissioned, sent out by the church at Antioch, went on that first missionary journey, who did he have with him? Barnabas. Comes back, he and Barnabas are that dynamic duo, and so they do all the stuff of that first journey. They have the Jerusalem conference of Acts 15. Then he comes back, him and Barnabas have the disagreement and the separation, and so now he picks Silas, and so now he's got Silas with him, and he's going through this. They pick up Timothy along the way, and so now as they're making this journey, and then somebody else that was with them during parts of this was Luke himself. And we know that because of the we passages that are found within the book of Acts. So now here we have Timothy or Paul, and he's left at Athens, and these men are making their way back to the area, the city of Berea. And he says, "Now, when you get there, you send Timothy, you send Silas, ASAP." So, Dale.
Anytime, as Paul was, anytime that you're on a difficult journey or difficult situation, then many times, getting the drugs proven and all that. And it's a real that somebody, nothing else, is with you.
Yeah,
It's with you, if you're not alone.
that's right. And I thought about like what we read, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. As Paul or the writer of Ecclesiastes is stating, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Now, it talks about, if two are traveling, then you get comfort, you get strength. If you get cold, what can two people do? They can get together and they can warm up. I mean, there's just a lot of things that when you're traveling, you want a companion with you. Well, he wanted Timothy and he wanted Silas. So he sent that message, "Come back." Now, what we do not know for sure is they ever joined Paul in Athens, because we don't pick Silas and Timothy up again till we get to Acts 18 and verse 5. He's already in Corinth now. So apparently they never got there. Now, this isn't the way we would do things. We'd get on our phone and we'd call them and say, "Hey, y'all need to come on." Well, what did we have to have? These men that had come from Berea, they came down and they were with Paul at Athens. They got him off the ship, got him out of harm's way. Then they had to catch another ship that was doing what? Making that trip back up there. Well, if the winds were not in their favor, How long could that trip have taken? And if they decided, well, okay, we're not going to go by sea, we're going by land, well, that would have been an even further journey, more time, more difficult. So there are a lot of things and variables that we could consider. Then when they did get back and they told Timothy and Silas, hey, Paul wants you to come to Athens. Well, then they had to do what? Get on a ship and make their way down that journey. So when we're talking about a period of time here that we don't know exactly how long it would be, but it wouldn't be like, okay, they're going to head home the next day and then they'll be right back the day after. So Paul wants them with him. Now, he's not going to wait though, because he's sent the message, y'all come with all speed. And now we see where Paul, now in verse 16, he's waiting. Now, while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him when he saw that the city was given over to idols. City was given over to idols. Therefore, he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with the Gentile worshippers, and in the marketplace daily with those who happened to be there. Then certain Epicurean and Stoic philosophers encountered him. And some said, what does this babbler want to say? Others said, he seems to be a proclaimer of foreign gods because he preached to them Jesus and the resurrection. Now, back to verse 16. He's come to Athens. Where was Paul raised? What was his home city? Tarsus of Cilicia. And so then we have Athens and we have Alexandria, Egypt. These three cities were known for their educational emphases. They were the educational and cultural centers of the day. So when Paul came into the city of Athens, it wasn't as if he had never seen this type of a setting before. He had been reared up in Tarsus, one of the three prominent educational centers. And so when he came to Athens, he came to the cultural and philosophical center of the Greco-Roman world. He entered into a place where, as he's going to even refer to the Athenians and their philosophers, what did they do all day? They just sat around in the marketplace and they just wanted to hear something new. Now, they didn't want to they didn't hear it so that they would be what? Inclined to believe it and follow it. They just wanted to hear new things and hear new things all the time. And part of that is, if you told me something new today, well, then tomorrow, guess what I got to do? I got to tell it. So the text says they were always ready to hear and to tell some new thing. Well, when Paul shows up in Athens, notice his spirit was provoked within him when he saw the city was given over to idols. I particularly like what I was reading, Brother David Roper's commentary, and he was talking about the difference between now, the mindset of people now, and the mindset of Paul when he got there. When people travel to Athens today and they behold all of the ruins. You have the Acropolis, you have the marketplace or the Agora, you have the Parthenon, the remains of the Parthenon. Parthenon was one of those seven wonders of the world. Arguably, it was the most beautiful building that had ever been built in the history of the world. When Paul saw all of that, when it was in its what? Prime, its heyday. He saw that. What did he see? A city full of what? Idols. People today go there and see it in its ruins, and all they see is architecture. They see great building design. What Paul saw provoked, stirred up his spirit within him, because he saw a city that was wholly given to what? Idols. One person of that time period made this statement. He said it was easier to find an idol in the city of Athens than it was to find a man. So when Paul sees the city, and he's now has his spirit provoked within him because he saw the entire city given over to idols. So, therefore, he reasoned. The word could be adequately translated as well, debated. So he debated with the Jews because he went to the synagogue. That was his custom. So he goes into the synagogue and he begins to debate with the Jews and with the Gentile worshipers. So he has the synagogue. Now, when would the Jews be in the synagogue? What day of the week? Huh? On Saturday. They'd be there. Paul went to the Sabbath on the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he was there and he was reasoning with them. He was debating with them. But then at other times, he was in the marketplace. It's very interesting if you go and you can look and see the Acropolis and the Parthenon. And so then we see where Paul was his sermon's going to be conducted on Mars Hill. And they say that if you go and you stand where Paul stood on Mars Hill, they said you can look one direction and 77 feet down, you see the city as it's moving out away from you. And then you can turn the other way and behind you, and you're going to see the Acropolis. The Acropolis stood up above, was elevated up above the Mars Hill section, where Paul would be called before the leaders and the rulers and stuff to make this great sermon. And so then you look here, and so then you're going to see where you have these views that Paul was going to be able to withhold. And yet what Paul was seeing was a city that was given to idols. And so now he is debating with the Jews. He is discussing things with the Jews about Christ and perhaps even about their tolerance and refusal, perhaps, to try to root out idolatry. Because if you were a Jew, what was the first thing that would come to your mind concerning God? What was one of the first of the 10 commandments? Shall have what? No other gods before me. So what offended Paul about this so much that didn't apparently offend the Jews who were living there on a daily basis?
Are we seeing God winning from the Jews in this situation with all the idols and all that? God not being with them. I'm not talking about God's part, I'm talking about the Jews not worshiping God as they had been worshiping, or should have been, for years and years and years.
Well, yeah, and I think as I think about this, I think it's not any different in the first century than it is today in the 21st century. Folks, there are things that we ought to be offended by that no longer what? They no longer offend us. I mean, the taking of the Lord's name in vain, that is so common that, very seldom does somebody, get their feelings hurt over it. And I'm not saying that describes any of us, but what I'm saying is it's easy to get what to these situations? Desensitized. Just doesn't, it's just what it is. Well, these Jews were in this city that was totally full of what? Everywhere they looked, there was an idol. Now, you can make the application of this to whatever particular points you want to, whatever application you care to make of it. And, but the point is Paul was upset by this. And so now he's going to go in, he's going to reason with them, and he's going to do so in the synagogue when the Jews are there. He's going to do it with the Gentile worshipers, those who were Gentiles that were believers in God and were able to and worship God. And then he's going to go into the marketplace, and in the marketplace he's going to be talking daily with those who happen to be there. So Paul was taking every opportunity to speak with the citizens of Athens. Now notice, then certain Epicurean and Stoic philosophers encountered him. Now I don't want to take a whole lot of time this evening talking about the Epicureans and the Stoics. What do we think of when we say somebody is very stoic? Do what? Okay, no emotion. That's what, okay, so this is the Stoics. The Stoics were just emotionless. They were just kind of just without any feeling. That's how the Stoics were. Epicureans, on the other hand, though. The Epicureans, for better, perhaps, definition, they were the let's eat, drink, and be happy because tomorrow we're going to die. So you had two opposite spectrums. You had those, the Epicureans, and they're just living it up in every possible way you could think of. The Stoics were those who were just so emotionless and just sort of just had no feeling or nothing. They were just going through life. So you had the Stoics and the Epicureans. Now, their philosophers now encountered him. And some said, "What does this babbler have to say?" The word babbler literally could be translated seed picker. Seed picker. And the etymology of the word is such that it would be one that is really a word that is describing birds that would just sort of stay out on the fringes and just pick enough of this and this and this to stay alive. They were just seed pickers. So, that's the analogy of they're given to Paul. You're just out here, and except in this case, they think he has just got these little parcels and these little pieces and nuggets of this teaching that he's presenting to them. And so he's just a seed picker. He's just gathering different things. And so they were not holding him in any type of regards at all. You're just a seed picker. Now, others, though, said he seems to be a proclaimer of foreign gods because he preached to them. This word preached is the word euangelizo, which means preach the word. preach the gospel. So whenever we look at this now, they say he's just a seed picker. He's just grabbing little bits and pieces here and there and presenting them. And now he's coming to us and he's preaching and proclaiming a message that is a foreign God, because he was preaching to them Jesus. Now, what would that involve? Do what? The whole system. He preached unto them Jesus and the resurrection. Now, the thing about the Athenians and their idols is you had Athena, you had Zeus, you had all of these different idols, these gods that they would worship. But if you had a male, then you had his female counterpart. So this would be two gods that they would be worshiping. Now, what's interesting is Jesus preached unto them Jesus. The word Jesus is masculine. The word resurrection is feminine. So this leads some commentators to think that what they were saying is he's preaching us foreign gods, and it's God Jesus and God S, the resurrection. And so now this is what they're accusing him of, just preaching to them this strange doctrine about Jesus and the resurrection. Now this would be in line with what they were very much accustomed to. It's what they did, because the gods they worshiped, those idols, they had their male gods, and then they had his counterpart, which was female. So this would sort of be something they would expect. But what Paul was preaching was about Jesus and the resurrection. And so now he's going to be dealing with this group, this audience of people, and they're going to take him now to the Areopagus. This is what has been styled in many of our translations as Mars Hill. Mars Hill is the Roman, the Latin translation of this word Areopagus. So they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, "May we know what this new doctrine is of which you speak." Now keep in mind, because when we get into Paul's sermon, and Paul's sermon takes 10 verses, and it'll take you probably a minute and a half to read it. But when we think about what he's preaching, it is what? Jesus and the resurrection. Now they want to hear this new doctrine. "For you are bringing," verse 20, "some strange things to our ears. Therefore we want to know what these things mean. For all the Athenians and foreigners who were there spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear some new thing." Now, I don't know, I've never been there. But from the reading I've done, this still describes Athens, Greece to this very day. If you go to Athens, Greece, and then you go in and you behold the city and you look at the city and you get involved in the city, then what you find is this is the mindset of the Athenians to this very day. They want to what? Hear something new. And they said, commentator I was reading, he says, when you go into the city, you won't go very far into the city before somebody asks you this question: what is the news? They want to hear some new thing so that they can turn around and then tell some new thing. So this is something that is still prominent in the city of Athens to this very day. Now, Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, Men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are very religious. Some translations would say superstitious. But he says, You're very religious. For as I was passing through and considering the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. This word unknown is where we get our word today, agnostic. Agnostic. And so you would have the a negative prefix and then gnosis, not knowing. And so this is to the unknown God that they have this altar. Therefore, he says, the one whom you worship without knowing, him I proclaim to you. Now, what was he preaching earlier? Jesus and what? Resurrection. Now, what's the first point that he makes in his sermon? Because we just started it. God. God who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands. Well, that's true.
That is the beginning.
And he's in a city where they did not believe it, and everywhere they looked, what did they see? A temple devoted to their God. And he said, Now the God who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands. So his first point is God is creator of all things. Secondly now, nor is he worshipped with men's hands, as though he needed anything, since he gives to all breath, life, breath, and all things. So, when you look at verses 24 and 25, the emphasis is upon God and God's creative power. And you cannot confine God to what? A man-made building, because he made all things. 24, 25, he's talking about God. Now, 26, and he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwelling. So now, 24 and 25, God's the creator. 26, he created whom? Man. Now, this idea of one blood, from one blood, God made every nation of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings. When we think about God, he has made from one blood. Folks, it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter where you were born, it doesn't matter. We all track ourselves back originally to whom? Adam. There's one blood. One blood. And so when you think about this, you then get into their custom. Because did the Jews think they were better than other men? Well, so did the Athenians. They had a very, very high opinion of themselves. They thought they were better. And now Paul has done what? He has brought them all down, and we're all at the same place. I'll never forget years and years ago when I went to Jamaica for a mission trip over there, and H.D. Simmons was the one leading our campaign. And so we got off the plane and got to the place where we were staying and everything. And so we're getting our instructions. And then this is what H.D. was telling us. If anything happens during the week where you get into any kind of a situation with the Jamaicans, Just tell them, one blood, one blood, one blood. Because the Jamaicans honored and respected that. And so he said, you need to have one blood, and then your next response needs to be Colonel Martin. Colonel Martin. Now, Brother Martin's dead and gone now, but he was known throughout that whole island. And he said, Colonel Martin and one blood. He said, you'll get home safe. So what do you think has ingrained in my mind? One blood, Colonel Martin, one blood, which nothing ever happened. But anyway, he was just giving us that. And now, whether it would have worked, I don't really know. But, we never had to use it. But anyway, he made from one blood. So he says God's the creator, and he created all men, and he created them what? Equal. Verse 27, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. So notice, God created all things. God created man. We're all equal. And every man has what? Same responsibility. Seek God. Seek God and see if you can find him, even though he's not what? Far from any of us. Folks, this is something that has been really encouraging to me throughout the years, and I've probably shared it with you before. But how far is God from us? Okay. But folks, God is the exact distance from us that he needs to be. He's not so far away that we can't what? Reach him. But he's not so close to us that he what? Overwhelms us. If we want him, he's right there. If we don't, he's still what? Right there. He's the perfect distance from his creation. All right, we're going to quit. We're going to be overrun with youngins. So we'll quit at this point. We'll pick this up again Sunday morning. Thank y'all.
All right, good evening, everyone. Glad to see all of you. You would take your songbook. 883 will be our song of invitation. Carson will be leading us in that song, number 883. Stand as our devotional this evening, Wayne will be leading us in our
Closing prayer. All right, by way of announcement,
announcements. Remember, tomorrow night I'm headed to the Home of Recovery.
and items that we are supplying for them this month are butter or margarine and assorted flavors of cranberry juices. So I know we have a pretty good assortment of those things already there, but I just wanted to remind you of that one more time. Also, this coming Sunday evening, following services, we will have our meeting for our Mission Monday that will take place this evening or this coming Sunday evening after services. Finger foods are going to be provided as we bring those, and then we will be having those where you'll have the ability to get up and eat while we're going through our presentation and our meeting. And so we'll try to make that as quickly done as possible. So please keep that in your schedules for this coming Sunday night for our meeting concerning our mission work. All right, we have a lot of folks in our bulletin that we need to keep in our prayers, but a particular mention we want to make is Roma's sister, Mary Word. Mary and Marion have been here with us several times, and so they're faithful members of the church over in the Scurry area. And so Mary has been diagnosed with breast cancer, and so they're going to be planning a treatment option for her. So we want to keep Mary in our prayers and the Word family, and they'll be able to get a course of treatment and a plan for her that will be very conducive to her health, and everything will be easy on her as well. All right, that's all the announcements I've got. Anything else we need to talk about? Okay, and y'all be sure and remind Ken that he's 24 today. All right. Stan, come speak to us, please.
I guess it's good evening for those of you who got a little rain, a little bit, but it was pretty for just a little bit. I've been retired for nearly 7 years, and I sometimes have too much time on my hand to think about things, which made me think about time. In the beginning, in Genesis 1, the first 5 verses, it says God created the heavens and the earth. And then he gave us probably one of the most important gifts that we've gotten, except for Jesus Christ, but every human being has got this important gift. It was time. He created the sun and the moon so that we would have day and night. So that's an important thing, especially when you get closer to not having as much time. But none of us know how much time we're going to have. I spent the first 7 years of my life waiting for people to die. I spent the next 39 years waiting to keep people alive. So I've spent a lot of time waiting. But what I want to talk about tonight is, and it's for me, but I hope you can get something out of it. And I guess what it would be about is, am I using my time wisely? Everyone has the same amount of time in a day. You have exactly the same amount of time to spend today as everyone else who is alive. Time waits for no man. We have 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours in one day, 1,440 minutes in a day, and 86,400 seconds in a day. But you only have so much time, so spend it wisely. Recognizing the value of your time, Solomon understood the importance of time when he said, "To everything there's a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." Ecclesiastes 3:1. Time is more valuable than money. If you lose your money, you can usually figure out a way to earn more. But if you run out of time, everything's over. You can get money back, but you can never get time back. Time is the most valuable asset you have, but it's only as valuable as you make it. Hamburger flippers trade their time for $10 an hour. Lawyers trade their time for $350 an hour. The way time is used separates the rich from the poor. The difference between an impoverished person and a wealthy person is how they use their time. Using time wisely is the secret of wealth. Opportunities follow those who use their time wisely. Time is our currency here on the earth. We trade time for money, our paychecks. We trade time for relationships. We trade time for knowledge. What are you trading your time for? How are you spending your time? What are the time wasters in your life? What steals your time? What do you need to eliminate from your life? Your time is a seed. Use your time as a seed. You can never achieve your dreams, your purpose, until you learn how to sow the miracle seed of time. What you have in life is a result of the time that you have sown. How do people sow their time? A bodybuilder trades time for sculptured muscles. A master musician spends hours practicing the piano. The athlete practices until he is the best. A doctor trades 8 years of his life in order to learn how to diagnose a disease. Anything of significance in your life will require time. Investing time is the only way you can gain something you want. People say, "I wish I had more time," but no one ever received any more time by saying this. Start using time, excuse me, start using the time you have more wisely. You will never find time because it isn't lost. You can only decide to use your time in valuable ways. You can never get more time, but you can maximize the time you have. Learn to master your time, or your time will master you. Develop some develop time consciousness. Work on time management skills. Plan long term. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. People who set goals are much more likely to be successful than those without goals. Use calendars, clocks, lists, timers. Everybody's got a phone. Like mine's at back there. There's a calendar in there. And I put things on there because I found out as I get older, it don't remember good no more. And you can share those events with your spouse or whoever. Plan your day. Invest in your dreams. Put those important things on your calendar. One day you'll share that calendar with God. Am I spending time in making my dreams come true? If you don't want to or need to do, if you don't want or need to do an activity, stop doing it. By eliminating unproductive activities from your life, you will discover more time for doing what you really want to do, what you really want to be doing. It is said that life gets in the way. But my life is what I purchase with my time. What am I trading for my time? What should my priority be for my time? You got a Bible with you or some phone? Turn to Matthew chapter 6. Go down to about verse 31. Matthew chapter 6, verse 31. Jesus tells us what to do with our time. Doesn't suggest it, doesn't recommend it, because he says, therefore, do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But if you want to, or if you got time, seek the kingdom of God. Did y'all say that? Sometimes I act like that's what mine says, but it doesn't. It says, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, but for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Got four more questions. There's a whole lot of questions for myself. How do I sow my seed of time? I try to think about that. Am I sowing the seed of the kingdom? Am I spending my first priority seeking the kingdom? And where is my treasure laid up? Time. We only have so much. There were a lot of children a year ago that had their whole life in front of them. And they don't have any time anymore. Could be one of us. Or none of us. But we're all at some point going to click that clock out of time. And when your heart stops and you stop breathing and you enter into eternity, I hope that my treasure and my time was spent seeking the kingdom of God. So tonight, if you have that hope of eternal life with Jesus Christ in heaven, good. If you don't, please think about heaven and that other place. If you have a problem in your life and you'd like the prayers of the church, if you would, please come as we sing this song.
Father in heaven, we are thankful for this opportunity we have to come together to study your word. Pray that our worship has been acceptable to you. We ask you to help us with our evangelistic efforts, as you help us to be successful. Be with the sick of our number, restore them to their health as you will. Forgive us of our sins. In Christ's name, amen.